I just want to put this in here because I know it's already been in there. It's about coaching staffs. What happens when coaches get fired is what you need to know. What happens to those people? JT and I both have coached, been around a lot of different coaches, or maybe not even when they fire, when they get retired, when the head coach retires, what happens? So a lot of times it's known to us in the industry that when the head coach leaves, everybody else's job is in jeopardy. You're sitting, you're waiting, and you're nervous, but you're already making calls. You got your agent making calls. If you're in high school, you already started to put your resume out, just trying to figure out where you can go next. Because when the head coach is gone, pretty much everybody's contract is terminated. So for us to speculate who's going to remain at a school is very, very hard to do. When I became the head coach of JP2 and the other places, I always try to interview people and see who I would like to keep from the staff, if any at all, because I might have come with a group that I already like and trust. Being a head coach means that you're building those, because in your interview, most of the time the athletic director is asking right now, who are you probably going to come with you? Do you already know who your coordinator is going to be? Do you know who your defensive back is going to be? And if you got a list that already says, hey, I've already worked this out with these guys, and yes, they will come, man, we like that even better, because they would not even necessarily scramble around or trying to renegotiate or trying to figure out what kind of budget, it's going to have for a staff. So that's what I want you guys to hear. So JT, come on in here for a second, right? And I feel like this would be appropriate if we could do this right now, because I was looking at the score of the Kansas City game, but also was quickly reminded of the video that you showed me of what the weather looked like in Buffalo.
In Buffalo, yeah.
Yeah, it was bad. If you guys hadn't seen that, this made me want to go to a different place. Y'all gonna like my lead here. So I feel like we need to go to the beach just for a quick minute.
Oh, wow.
I just need to know. I just know if we can go to the beach for a quick minute, because we got this really great company that supports us, and they make you feel at home. And when you look at that Buffalo stuff and you're looking at the weather in Kansas City and all this kind of stuff, it makes you want to go to a place like this, something that you can create at your house. So let's see if JT. Let me tell you about Beaches LLC. Yes, Beaches LLC is your source in the state of Alabama and the Florida Panhandle for exquisite quartz sand beach pools by Biodesign USA. A Biodesign beach sculpted pool is crafted with beach entries, customized seating areas, and swimming zones, and they all can be personalized to your swimming needs. The Biodesign swimming pool is meant to immerse you in your surrounding environment. The illusion of a truly beautiful beach can be created and extended onto the patio area, creating one seamless shore environment. Let them help you turn your dream backyard escape into reality with an eco-friendly, more durable, less time, and less expensive to maintain, totally customizable pool. To learn more about turning your dream into a reality, please visit their website at www.yourbackyardbeach.com.
Okay, so the chimes for you. There you
go. Yeah, I do. So, can you please make sure you put that little toss that I gave you on the highlight reel? Because you got to admit that was pretty damn.
No, that was good. Because I had no idea where this was going.
Well, I knew I needed to be there. So again, thank you to Beaches LLC for jumping on with Teague's Take, and one day we're going to be fortunate to have something like that. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into part one of this, right?
Oh, right. And the quick reminders for people who just showed up again. We know there's going to be a lot of questions in chat. We're going to save all of the questions for the end after we get through some of the film session, just so that we can address the things that we need to get addressed, especially when it comes to coaches and who's here and who's not here and players, all that kind of stuff. We will put them in the chat. I'll put them in a queue. We'll get them at the end.
Yes, thank you for reminding me of that, because our main goal is to be able to give you the information on what we feel like the play will look like for Alabama. Do we have any kind of insight on what the offense might look like? What does he like to run? And then actually show you the film of some of those things too and dive into that. So that's going to take us a good minute. So we need for y'all to be patient and understand that, and then we'll get to some of the other questions, as JT said at the end. So what we wanted to do first in the first part of the show is be able to talk about some data analysis. And JT's done a tremendous job of just looking at some, I don't know, a lot of different categories, right? So is there somewhere you want to start with that, or saying, all right, well, why don't we just start with the offensive side? All right, because everybody's going to be wondering about what is this going to look like for Jalen Milroe. Are we still going to run the ball? Are we throwing the ball? Do the formations look different? You had Tyrese come in. How much is this actually going to change? So why don't we stick on the offensive side of the ball right now? Is there anything glaring to you that he's kind of done in the past, particularly while he's at Washington, that you think our people should know?
Yeah. So there is. Oh, we know he doesn't run the ball as much as the predecessors. But I think that there is a perception that he really doesn't run the ball like ever. But that's not quite true. Right. It's 60% pass, 40% run. Almost balanced. Like I know that that 20% different. I mean, it's 10% off from the average over the last 2 years, but 60-40 is kind of
that's split. That's 50-50. 60-40 is the new 50-50, isn't it? Just because of the rules of the game.
The way this game is now, 60-40. I mean, we see it in the NFL all the time, right? In my mind, 3rd and 3 is like an obvious rundown, which is not true anymore. 3rd and 3 means pass for most teams. Hell, I mean, even 3rd and 1 a lot of times. If you're not the Philadelphia Eagles, basically 3rd and 2 or longer is going to be a pass.
Pass, right?
So,
that's right.
60-40 is not bad at all. Which you'll also see, because I went and I looked at what are their top formations. A lot less heavy than we saw the last year. I think it'll look more like Sarkisian. They like to get into doubles, 10 personnel. So one back, 0 tight ends, 2 wide receivers each side. Then they also, from there, they like to get into 11 personnel doubles, where they'll have 2 wide receivers on one side, a tight end, but he's off the ball, and then a receiver. Then I think their third favorite is like empty, which you can talk about that. You actually enlightened me that was actually, they were actually running quads in empty and not just 3x2, which is yikes. That's nightmare for defense. That's a problem. But then they like to get into various forms of trips. So I think trips in totality is what they like to run the most, whether that be trips with the tight end in the trips, which is what a lot of people are going to call tray. Then they've got trips closed, where they've got 3 receivers on one side, the tight end away and attached to the line, and then they'll get into some trips open as well. But it's essentially some form of trips / tray. Then it's going to be empty, and then your double sets, and the back is going to be set strong to most of these. Sometimes they'll get into a dot or something like that, but we know we're still going to see a lot of shifts. We're going to see a lot of motion. They're going to line up and look like they're going to do one thing, and they're going to move to something else, get into something else like that, and then it's going to be you're going to have command of the offense.
Yeah. So for the formation standpoint, meaning how they line up, it should be, because what we saw the past year at Alabama, we still saw a lot of different formations, or it started to progress a little bit. To the eye, people won't really see that much of a difference, you think, or is it, if you're just a layman's person and you're looking at it and you're looking out there, it's not going to look too much different, right?
No, I mean, from last year, maybe just fewer tight ends on the field at the same time.
Mm-hmm. So not as much 12 personnel, or are you saying in that the formation doesn't necessarily mean the personnel, because you're still going to get the same formations if you got 12 or 13
Yeah,
personnel.
but I think the personnel is going to be much different. I didn't see, and I forgot to run the personnel report, but at least when I was looking at the formations, checking the film to make sure they matched what the stats said, it was all 10. It was either what we were talking about earlier, 01, 10, or 11.
Yes. Okay. And so, well, when we talk to A1, go ahead and explain O1 before we.
Yeah, so how we do personnel numbers, the first digit is how many backs are in the game. The second digit is how many tight ends are in the game. So 10 personnel, 1 back, 0 tight ends. 11 personnel, 1 back, 1 tight end. 01, 0 backs, 1 tight end, which anytime you have 0 backs, it's going to be some form of empty, whether or not it's a tight end attached. You know, I don't know how they're going to do it. Whether it might be quads and a tight end and backside. There's many different formations you can get into with all of the different personnels. But anytime it's 01, that just means empty.
Yeah. Unless you got a Debo Samuel or Kendrick Law or something that you could throw back there as a running back. For the personnel. Okay, so I did look at that, and JT is thank you for sharing that with us. And I did look at the formation just a little bit, and although he was diving into the formations, I kind of looked at what the personnel group, and he's right. You know, again, it's all on personnel. Do you have good tight ends? How many do you have? How did you recruit? This type of stuff. So, the 10, 11, 12 seem to be his highest amount of groupings, and believe it or not, the 01 grouping, as you said, was in there too, as a in the top 4 groupings. So he's trying to spread you out and do some things there. Okay, all right. So what do you take that from there? Now that you're looking at the formations, anything else you saw and what that means from maybe how you play or what kind of plays?
I think that inherently kind of dictates what your run game is, and I think that's backed up by some of the breakdowns on their run concepts. They anecdotally, the heavier your sets are, the more likely somebody's pulling. The more likely you're going to be doing gap scheme things, power, trap, lead, counter. Not that they don't do these things. They just don't do them nearly as often as inside zone and outside zone. So
Yes.
when you only got 5 linemen in the game, man, not a tight end. Well, they'll have a tight end, but we'll say 5.5 linemen. It's much easier just to run zone. Seems like the idea is to spread people out. Ooh, look, spread offense. Who'd have guessed? Spread people out. Try to get an even number in the box. Even, not meaning 2, 4, 6. Even meaning hat on a hat, 1 for 1, and then run the ball from there. Maybe even +1 because you got your quarterback who can run. Which wish I would have got my plays in there, because I did have a couple quarterback runs that they have that I think that we might see more of. They don't do it now, and I think kind of that was part of that is when you got Michael Penix Jr. slinging a rock all over the place and he's a Heisman candidate for his arm. You don't need to have him run QB counter and sweeps and power and all that kind of stuff with the quarterback. But when you got Jalen Milroe, maybe you can start. It's a good coach's offense never is stagnant. Just because that's what you did doesn't mean that's always what you're going to do, right? You have a system. Your system should adapt to the personnel that you have on your team. So knowing that they have quarterback runs in the system, maybe some more of that shows up with what we've got.
That's right. And so I'll dive in that a little bit more. And I do want to say, man, JT, and I just want to, because in my deal, I was thinking, our mantra is so much of run the down ball, be physical, and all this kind of stuff, right? And there are certain type of runs that happen with that, the powers, the counters, and just the aggressiveness of that. I'm hoping he stays with that. I do need to say that inside zone can be a very physical type of run. We ran a lot of it last year. It's not something new because you create the double teams and things of that nature. So as JT was saying, that has been his favorite run. I did look at the stats and look at the numbers, and it was 31% inside zone or the run. That's pretty high when you start, saying, hey,
yeah, and a lot of it was read option anyway.
That's right, and that's the other piece where JT's getting into. We can talk about that, how you can actually use the quarterback to keep the ball and throw it, or have a quarterback pull it and run it. So there's added pieces of that. Because when I was looking at it, I was like, man, I don't know, this is kind of booty. But I'm so used to Jalen Milroe and wanting to run it. And then I'm looking at other stuff like, man, dang it, pull it, or something. They're just chasing and running back down in there. They can't get it really going, All right. The next piece and why I thought that was so interesting is that 30%, because the next run in the data sheet, they call it a pull and lead, right? It's basically a sweep in my mind. You got a puller.
Yeah, so I was looking at those because they were all like different, right? They had like what kind of looked like a wing tee belly without the wing. So it's like a buck sweep, I guess, except with just one puller instead of two. And then some of them look like power.
That's right. They look like counter. They look like power. So I was really just kind of lumping it all in there because when you look at counter, so anyway, the pull and the lead was like 17%, and then the counter was at 14%. So there wasn't anything close to the inside zone. You're going to get heavy inside zone, inside zone, throw the bubble, that kind of thing. Seems a little elementary, not very creative, as we're always talking as analysts and stuff. Hey, it's just kind of boring. But if it's effective and your guys can cut and do those things, Michigan's run game's kind of boring too, right? But they're, running it down your throat just because they're physical, the same way Alabama has been. Now, he was very creative with doing things. Tommy Rees, I'm talking about, was very creative with runs. I did like his runs. I don't know if we ever actually said that. I liked the running package that we had. I just thought it was fun to watch and just never knew where the ball was going to go because people are crossing your face and all this kind of stuff. This offense, from the small little chunks that I watched, there wasn't a lot of that eye candy. It was just, it's zone. We're going to be smart and block the people that we got to block. Counter, they come wrap around and all this kind of stuff. So I think the run game will be, I don't know, it goes into how he uses Jalen Milroe, a quarterback that could run the ball, or if he's going to try to do something else with the passing game. So I guess we can go ahead and talk to you, anything you want to say about the passing piece.
Yeah. So I also looked at their top 5 most thrown routes. Trying to remember off the top of my head because I left my computer in the car. Hitches, number 1. Out routes, number 2. Crossers, number 3. Go routes, number 4. Wide screens, number 5. Those are not complicated routes, which is great. I mean, I think that simple does not mean simplistic, which is something that I definitely live by and is in my own coaching philosophy. You want to make things simple, but we don't want to be simplistic. So with that, and I think a lot of the wide screens probably are actually, since we know that 20% of the plays are RPOs in some form or fashion. That's probably where a lot of the wide screens come in. But as I was telling you earlier, those hitches, in my mind, you're thinking 5-yard hitch,
Oh, nice.
just quick. They're not 5-yard hitches. Most of them are not 5-yard hitches. Most of them are like somewhere between 15 and 17 yards. It looks like a go route. At least if you look at the play art, looks like a go route. Somebody's over the top and then they curl up and they hit them that way. Even some of them look like 4 verts, and they're all curling up 15 to 17 yards. The times that I was seeing shorter hitch routes were shorter scenarios. 3rd and 3, just get to the sticks, 2nd and 6, maybe it's a 7. But man, if they got some time, if they feel like they got some time, and it's 1st and 10, that hitch route might be 22 yards down the field, and it looks like a go, but he curls up. So a lot of the half field concepts are pretty easy, whether it be that Ohio concept, out route and a go, which is really, and theirs, it's a deep out and a deep hitch, maybe 10 yards on the out route and 17 back to 15 on the hitch, and they can shorten that down. They like to run that Carolina route. I don't know what chat would call it at large. I don't even know what most coaches call it, but that semicircle, we used to call it we call it a Carolina route in college. We called it a Maui corner in high school, but 5-yard, it's basically a 5-yard now slant, and then you're going to take it up vertical 10 yards and then 5 yards back out to the corner. Kind of looks like a C. So that seems to be a lot. And then a lot of isolation routes. So they're running people in places to kind of pick on pattern matching and pick on zones where they can get one receiver isolated on somebody one-on-one and try to fit the ball in that way. So I don't think it is, if you look at it at the play diagrams on paper, I don't think it's complicated, but it looks like to me that it's designed to take those concepts and confuse the rules of your defense.
Yep. So if you want to break down what JT is saying, essentially, you got to have someone at the helm that can run that be at quarterback who can. The concept is not hard, but where you need to throw the ball to and the time that you release the ball has to be on
timing.
You have to be on point. You can't. In some cases, you can't hold the ball too long, right? But you need to get it out. Those are the RPOs and the other things. Those need to be accurate throws, short bubbles, hitches, things that you're talking about, the slants, the outs, all those things got to come out on time. But it is kind of fun for him to say, you know what, just don't, if you want to sit, you're going to get hung with something right behind you. The out 9 concept. So if they see a corner sitting, someone from upstairs is saying, hey, tell me to hit that doggone 9, that kind of thing. But that still takes a very good cerebral quarterback. I'm not just talking about that one route, but some of the other stuff that's happening. So you got to be able to go from your first read to your second read, and some of it might have to be pre-snap based upon what he's doing. So I thought it was kind of cool to watch it and difficult. Like JT said it the best. The route seems so simplistic, but at the same time, you had to cover everything. Which one are you going to cover? Are you covering this deep ball I got? Are you covering this out ball?
Yeah. And I think the best way to put it in is that those concepts are very good at putting one player in conflict, right? He can't be right. And if he tries to play both, there's 3 options. Take receiver A, take receiver B, or try to cover both. And 2 of those options are going to be incorrect.
Mm-hmm. So that is good. We do want to, so some of the clips that we will show here in a minute are not all the ones that he just said. I can tell you the ones that I actually put in there. I actually put in, I'm saying it's a bubble route, but it's off of a RPO. So we better talk about what the run look like if he decided to hand it off. A mesh route, those are like crossing routes. Those are, again, with someone else somewhere where you still have short people that can catch short routes, but there's always something going over the top too if you want to get nosy. Quads and what that looks like, I thought is an interesting pick. And then something they call the dagger, and you probably have another name for it. You'll see it, but it's basically he likes to run a lot of I call them four beaters, and maybe that's because he likes to play so much four. The up the field, someone's going vertical, and then you got to dig behind him, or coming underneath, or perhaps the deep overs, kind of like what Bama has been running in the past. We are going to sneak in a little bit of Fresno film just to see, so you can see what the plays look like in the red uniform instead of the purple uniforms. Well, we'll show some run plays too. We do have inside zone counters and the pull and lead. We'll see how much time we have to be able to show those clips as well. The only other piece of the thing that we won't show is necessarily the defense on that. But JT, I don't know how much you looked at statistically. This will be the last piece before we get to the film.
At the defense?
Yeah.
None. Zero.
Okay. And so I did. And I really just looked at what the top coverages were that he was actually running all of last year. And the number one coverage, which would be a little bit different for us, right, would be cover 4. He played quarters most of the time. About 30% of the time it was quarters. I did watch some of the film. I'm sorry that I didn't get the film up for you to be able to show it to you. JT, you probably want to take a peek at it when you can, because it's a real aggressive 4, though. That scared the heck out of me because those safeties set real flat-footed and real close. So the post was always like one-on-one.
Well, I want to see, because quarters is kind of my thing now.
Yes.
So I'll be sure to study that.
Yeah, I love it too. I love a cover 4. I'm not. I was shocked to see how aggressive the safeties were. They were true run fillers. It's similar to what you're doing, right? And they turned it into a pattern match like you would do in cover 3. So there were a lot of times teams would know that they were trying to get corners on the safeties or overs, and they would just end up just taking it and kind of eating it up. And it basically used the pro concept, the same thing we did when I was with the Cowboys and the Packers and everywhere else. Corners, you got to make your money. The safeties are going to be aggressive in this run. They're going to be late. They'll shield you and try to make the ball throw over your head if they're late, but you better cover the post. So that's basically.
I mean, that's my rule. Hey, if it's a post by number 1, that's your problem. That's not a me problem.
Yeah, so you got to have some pretty good corners to be able to do that. The second coverage was cover 3. It just looked like cover 3. Nothing. It was about 26%. Is what I have here, and so that was. It was still pattern match. It didn't look like just let everybody run through the zone. They were really
not a country cover 3, as I would call it.
Yeah, so they were doing that, and then you actually play a little bit more man than I thought. And now again, they're in a different conference. They're doing certain things, so the percentages and all that stuff might change once you come into the SEC. But he played man about 18% of the time. After that, everything else kind of fell down. There wasn't a whole lot of combo coverage. There wasn't a whole lot of other stuff with it. So it could look very different for a secondary. So when we were talking about, I'm sure we're gonna get asked about on what does the secondary, who is the secondary coach and all that kind of stuff. It's a different feel from what Nick Saban has been running for years. If he sticks with the same type of things, because quarters is totally, I'd say totally different than how we've been playing at Bama over the past few years, right? Would you agree with that or no?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've kind of, dabble in quarters a little bit, but Rip List 3 has always been Saban's staple. So, but as times change. You got to start, your percentages start to change of what you run and what you need to run, and personnel kind of dictates a little bit of that too. So,
yeah. Okay. All right. Well, is there any other glaring thing you feel like you need to say before we get into this film?
Yes, because I was like I said before, there were some QB runs that I was trying to find, and I was shocked because a lot of the QB runs were not actually QB runs. What it was Wildcat. It was a ton of Wildcat.
No, I didn't watch any of those.
Yeah, so they'd line up and then motion Penix out and bring a receiver in. It could have been anybody. Sometimes it was a receiver, sometimes it was a running back. You know, it was just organized chaos is the way I would say it, because they'd line up one way, then they'd shift, and then they'd motion, and then next thing you know, it's a direct snap to the running back, and of course it's still inside zone, but now you got somebody else with their hands on the ball. There's a lot of things they like to do. They will give you a lot of different looks, and as you were talking about with Penix, a lot of checks being made at the line, trying to get them into the right spot and the right formation, all those different things. So the QB room is going to have their work cut out a little bit offensively, because they're going to have, the expectation is that they're going to have to be a general on the field, I think. At least that's what we saw. Now, Penix is a Heisman finalist and whatnot, so you can give that to him. Penix also played for DeBoer, I think, at Indiana, so it wasn't like his first time in the offense. So there's all kind of different things that all the quarterbacks are going to have to figure out over the next couple of years.
Yes, that's right. So it'll be fun to watch over the spring when spring football gets here and what that actually looks like.